compliance with the Open Meeting Act and filing of the meeting notice and posting the agenda. Pursuant to the Oklahoma Meeting Act, this meeting shall be held and now open here at the Department of Transportation. So the call to order and recording members present, please.
First Congressional District Commissioner Kevin Potter.
Aye.
Second Congressional District Commissioner David Conway.
Here.
Third Congressional District Commissioner Charles Ortega. Fourth Congressional District Commissioner Lindy Ritz.
Here.
Fifth Congressional District Commissioner Blake Rainey.
Here.
At-large Commissioner Chairman Jim Putnam.
Here.
At-large Commissioner Jerry Hunter.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of the commission meeting of August 11th. Having reviewed the minutes, does anyone have any additions or corrections? As I recall, they were quite extensive because of all of the grants given out, and that was quite impressive, so,
Move to approve. Second. Oh, sorry.
all right. Call for approval.
Commissioner Potter.
Aye.
Commissioner Conway.
Aye.
Commissioner Ritz.
Abstain.
Commissioner Rainey.
Aye. Chairman
Putnam.
Aye.
Commissioner Hunter.
Aye.
Okay, next on the agenda is Grayson Ardes. We have a new airport engineer, chief airport engineer.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Thank you for coming today. Item number 4, we have the introduction of our chief airport engineer, Mr. Kelly Fincannon. You've probably seen Kelly out in the audience before. Comes to us with decades of experience in the civil engineering forum from all modes of transportation, but most recently probably about 15 years or so of airport engineering experience. And he's going to be a good complement to Ben Nahavi, our existing airport engineer. And so we're excited to have Kelly on board and glad to see the experience that he's going to bring to the agency, to the commission, and to helping out our airport system in Oklahoma. And let Kelly come forward, maybe say a few things about himself.
Thank you, Director. Commissioners, I'm really excited to be part of the Oklahoma Aeronautics team. As Grayson said, I do have about 38 years of consulting engineering experience, and I've worked literally from coast to coast on projects and internationally, and keep coming back to Oklahoma, which is my home state where I was born and raised, and I'm glad to be back and staying in Oklahoma. For the last 15 years, I have worked on almost exclusively on Oklahoma's airports, so I'm very familiar with the airports. And I think this experience has given me great relationships with the staff at the OAC, the staff at Southwest Region of FAA, all the consultants, most of the airports I've been to and met through OA and other opportunities like that, as well as the construction contractors and vendors. So I think these relationships that I have will be a great asset to the OAC, and I'm really excited for us all to work together to improve Oklahoma's airports. So nice to meet you. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer.
Any questions? Welcome, we're glad to have you.
Well, thank you very much. I'm glad to be here.
Director's report.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. It's been a busy couple of months. In fact, actually, we're going back to the July meeting. As you know, we didn't have a director's report at the August meeting for sake of all those grants that you all approved. Started off with our meeting with the Oklahoma City Chamber. Came over here to the Transportation Building and met with the Oklahoma City Chamber and some of their government affairs officials and kind of discussed moving forward, okay, what are some transportation-related legislative items that they need to partake in, both at the state level and then also the federal level too. And so I was there participating, representing aeronautics, talking about all the different aviation aerospace pieces of legislation that the city should be focused on, that the greater Oklahoma City Chamber should be focused on, things like being against privatization of air traffic control, and we know the detriment that would have to the Mike Monroe Aeronautical Center, ensuring funding for the airport system, ensuring the continuation of the economic development programs of the state, so on and so forth. So it was a good meeting to visit with the chamber and have that relationship with the Oklahoma City Chamber. There's something similar that happens with the Tulsa Metro Chamber as well. Item B, you'll see went to Ardmore. They have the announcement of the Global Transportation Industrial Park, as we visited about for years and years. Former Commissioner Wes Stuckey, who was on this board, this was really his vision to stand up a multimodal transportation facility there at the old Ardmore Army Air Corps facility. Started in 2008 with the rebuilding of the runway and making it a 9,000-foot runway for air cargo and larger aircraft operations. And it was a great event that we had. Actually, it was Chamber of Commerce weather, even though it was August 4th. It was actually pretty cool that morning, and so we were out there doing a groundbreaking. They have over $100 million of funding from various sources that they're going to be applying for both rail, surface transportation, and air transportation as well. It's very important that we continue to support them, and I know Ardmore is looking forward to continued support from the Aeronautics Commission for seeing that being a multimodal air cargo facility. Their vision kind of was, for those of you who know what Fort Worth Alliance is there in DFW, that's what they're trying to go after at Ardmore Municipal, is become a kind of a Fort Worth Alliance type airport. August 10th through the 12th, we had the Tinker and the Primes Conference. Great conference every year to discuss DoD and government operations. Keynote was Governor Stitt and let's see, make sure I get this right, General Charles Q. Brown Jr., the Chief of Staff of the Air Force. Had some great speakers. I actually participated in a panel with Career Tech and ACES and OU and the Manufacturing Alliance, and kind of discussed workforce and educational perspectives, so on and so forth. It was a great event, made lots of good connections. Obviously, the DoD sector is very interested in what we are doing from an industry support mechanism as well as from a workforce perspective. They're very excited to hear about the 50 grants that we're able to award at the August meeting and what that means for their workforce opportunities. As we know, the biggest single-site employer in the state of Oklahoma is Tinker Air Force Base, and they have a lot of STEM needs, engineering needs, mechanics, skilled labor needs, so on and so forth. And so very exciting to partake there at Tinker and the Primes. Followed that on with a drive down to Atoka, and we met with the Atoka city officials and local officials there. As you'll see in a future agenda item, and I know we've discussed it in the past, the Atoka Airport is hamstrung. It is pretty much landlocked. It has roadways, it has ravines, it has a cemetery, it has a hospital kind of surrounding it. It doesn't allow it to expand from its current 3,000-foot length. And so we've been identifying that for the better part of the last 5 years, knowing that they have the expansion potential, the growth potential to maybe look at a new location for an airport. And that doesn't happen every day. As we've talked about in the past, new runways at airports don't happen every day. There's only been about 2 or 3 of those that have happened in the last 2 decades. New airport location hasn't really happened since the Okemah Airport was relocated in 2011. That's the only one we can think of in the last probably 20, 30 years. And so that's what we're going to possibly embark on, and that's what we met with the Atoka officials about, is what's the growth opportunity look like from the industrial side, from the UAS, UAM, AAM sector, with what Daisy Ranch and the Choctaw Nation is doing, so on and so forth. And it's a pretty bright future for Southeast Oklahoma. They're going to become a hub as they're experiencing the benefits of the growth of the DFW Metroplex area coming up into the south central, southeast Oklahoma area. Followed that on with the AUVSI, Association of Unmanned Vehicle Systems International. We know that as the drone conference or the UAS conference. Obviously, they have all kinds of other autonomous vehicles that they deal with, but our sector that we're mostly concerned with is on the air side. AAM, Advanced Air Mobility, UAS, Unmanned Aircraft Systems. Great partnership conference there with us, Commerce, Career Tech, Oklahoma State University's Unmanned Systems Research Institute. We had several private companies that were there that partnered with us. It was a great conference there in Atlanta, Georgia. This was normally held in the springtime. It was pushed back until summer to allow for a grander, bigger crowd than what they were expecting at the normal April or May timeframe that they hold that meeting. We had our biannual or semi-annual meeting with the FAA and the ADO to discuss planning, programming, and needs for the Oklahoma airport system. Obviously, we have a great relationship with our ADO and being able to program those needs and ensure the needs of Oklahoma's airports are going to be met. And so we got together for a full day virtually on the 19th to discuss and have our staffs interact with what's the next 5 years going to look like in terms of FAA discretionary, some of the infrastructure proposals that are being discussed at the federal level, and how do we go ahead and finish out some of the COVID relief grants that are being sent out to airports under the ARPA funding flag. So great meeting with our FAA Airports office. I think we finally have the team back together with FAA for several years there. They're having different people do temporary duty assignments within the ADO, and it did impact a little bit with the number 2 person and some of the other engineering and planning positions. And so I think now, at least for this next year, we're going to be set in stone that we have the normal core team with our ADO to work with, and we're very excited and glad to see that we got the band back together. I was offered a speaking opportunity for the South Oklahoma City Chamber on August 25th. That was a great event. Spoke to about 150 people there at the Oklahoma City Community College Symposium Forum. Great opportunity to talk about all things aviation aerospace. Anytime we can get in front of a crowd that is non-aviation or aerospace centric, it's important for us to preach the message. You heard my predecessor, we always got to be that air evangelist and preach the good word of air evangelism, because most people don't get how aviation aerospace interacts on a daily basis with Oklahoma's economy. And so they're going about their business as real estate professionals or oil and gas professionals or agriculture or bioscience or medical, and they don't see that aviation aerospace and what it means for the state's second largest industry. And so it's a great opportunity. I think I spent at least 45 minutes after I gave the speech talking to various non-aviation folks that they became enlightened about what aviation can mean to the state. And so it's very, very awe-inspiring and glad that I got to do that. And I know we're trying to do more of that coming into this fall. These next 2 items, we had a couple of opportunities. H&I went down with Craig Smith, the director of OSIDA, and met with some folks there at OU, both from the Radar Innovation Lab. As we know, obviously we have the National Weather Service down there at OU and on their campus, and they do a lot of radar research, not just from the weather perspective, obviously that's where they got their start, but also from air traffic, as well as border intervention and patrol. We also met with the Oklahoma Mesonet, which I don't know if anybody uses the Mesonet in their daily life. I do, being an outdoorsman, I like to know what the wind's doing, and so yeah, we have a great network of AWOSs across the state, but you compose that with our Mesonet, which is all these weather observation systems, as you can see here in this picture. If you haven't visited the Mesonet website, I would encourage you to go do so. You can figure out your temperature, your winds, your rainfall, your soil temperature, your soil moisture, so on and so forth. And it's a great tool, not just for agriculture, but for aviation as well. And we're having some discussions about how can we partner with each other. They have a different system than the AWOS system that goes on to airports for multiple things. They have a few more sensors that they're trying to measure compared to what an AWOS and a weather observation system is doing for an airport. But we're looking at some partnership opportunities because they have a great system and a great network of tools to be able to observe what's happening climatologically within Oklahoma. I had our OMA Camp, as we know, our military assessment project. OMA Camp Steering Committee, this is our first one, a little different than what we originally were planning on, given COVID has really put a damper on our in-person plans to meet with the bases, with wind energy, with other private industry groups about tall structures. But we had a great OMA Camp Steering Committee meeting. We got everybody in the same virtual room discussing the topic, what the project's going to mean to Oklahoma, how they're going to be able to interact with it, both from the military side as well as the private sector, so on and so forth. September 2nd, went up to Sand Springs, William R. Pogue, visited with city manager, public works director, a couple of their council members, their airport manager, and kind of discussed what's the future of the airport going to be. We had a brief visit with them back in February of this year to just talk in general what kind of aerospace industry do they need to go after to try and attract to their airport. It was a great opportunity to follow on that meeting with really, okay, what's the infrastructure discussion going to look like? What are the projects that we need to go after for Sand Springs? Because really Sand Springs is a crown jewel of the Tulsa metro area. It's just about 12 minutes drive from the airport to downtown Tulsa. And so really it's pretty amazing that they have that facility there and that it can be just a great economic development resource for the state's second largest metro area. Had the Oklahoma Municipal League September 7th from the 9th. Obviously that was our closest ally and closest partner at the state level. Most all of our airports are owned or operated by municipalities of some form or fashion. And so obviously we always have our booth there. You see the good Michelle manning the booth at OML's conference. And as we always do, we are right next to the Oklahoma Airport Operators Association. It's kind of goes hand in hand. It's almost like the aviation aisle. There's a couple other aviation booths, some airport consultants there on that same aisle. And so it's a good opportunity to meet with a lot of our city stakeholders, mayors, city managers, public works directors, so on and so forth. And great opportunity to do that, and it really was a good conference. Mike Fina, who's their executive director, has been doing a really good job of helping us out and making sure that some of our legislative items, because what we want is clearly what most cities and communities want as well. And so very, very glad to be able to partner with OML on things like this, but also our legislative agenda as well. Most recently, just in the last week or so, we went to the Norman Chamber Aviation and Transportation Breakfast on October 1, where the keynote speaker was Governor Kevin Stitt. There's a picture of myself, the governor, and Ben, our airport engineer. Heard a great speech about the great things that Oklahoma's doing. Obviously, we always have the opportunity to talk about economic development, what aviation aerospace means to the state. And Mr. Chairman, you were there. Thank you for coming. Flew in, correct?
No.
No?
It was bad that day.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I couldn't. It was a little foggy when we walked in, so I couldn't remember if you flew or were four wheels on the ground. But great opportunity to talk every year at the Norman Chamber Breakfast. See these officials. Norman's got some really neat things happening with their airport. Lance Lampkin, their airport manager, has done some great things. It's good to see him grow up. I was a colleague of Lance's. He was at the University of Oklahoma's aviation program a little after I was, but we both went down some similar paths in that we both interned there at the Westheimer Airport for Walt Strong, and so good to see him taking the reins and doing good things for the Westheimer Airport. And then last but not least was yesterday. We had the Oklahoma Airport Operators Association quarterly meeting. They asked me to come speak about several different topics. Mostly it was about the ARPA funding, as well as what's happening with the Biden infrastructure, the bipartisan infrastructure framework, or the BIF as they call it, at the national level. What's going to happen at the state level from a perspective of what's going to be needed for 2022's legislative session. And then I also talked to him about the hangar program, which I know you all have discussed and given us the graces to move forward with. And so we are eagerly looking forward to, as is the airports, all those different opportunities that are coming about and all the different new funding mechanisms that are going to be rolling out probably here in the next 6 to 12 months, provided everything goes according to plan. So it's been a busy couple of months, busy time. Obviously, we've got some other items that we'll talk about that are not in the director's report, but are informational only that I and staff have been attending. And so glad to be able to report to you today, but I'll stand for any questions. And as always, as you see these events coming around, we will try and involve you as much as possible. Understand you guys have day jobs and jobs that and things going on in your daily lives, and so I don't want to overwhelm you, but you're welcome to attend any of these events that we are having, and we'd be happy to host you and even let you travel with us. We have that van. You can hop in the van with us and go wherever we're needing to go. So, or you can take your own transportation. Not going to force you to get in the van with us, but if you wanted to, the offer's there. So, stand for any questions, commissioners.
No questions? Move on, please.
Water here. Oshkosh, EAA. I know we had a couple of commissioners up there. Commissioner Rainey was there later in the week. Commissioner Putnam, you were there early in the week. I don't know, Potter, Commissioner Hunter, did you come up this year? No? It's a great Oshkosh, probably one of the best that we'd ever had in terms of attendance, our Saturday luncheon, and really the most important thing, the reason we're really all there, is the business meetings that we're having with various aviation aerospace companies. We've been meeting with aerospace companies up there probably since we originally started going, but in earnest about 2014, 2015 time period. And really, this year's meetings were some of the best we'd ever had. Companies that were excited to expand into Oklahoma or relocate their business into Oklahoma. Mr. Chairman, you heard the governor say it. He says it somewhat in jest, but also in a serious nature that, you know, the economic developer of the year for Oklahoma is a certain governor of California. But it's true. I mean, the things that are happening in other states are driving people to want to come and see what Oklahoma has to offer. And even out of country. We met with several companies that were based in Canada that are wanting to look to come to Oklahoma. And so us and the ACES team at Commerce, we went on a lot of visits. I think we had about 15 different company visits that we hit during our week at Oshkosh. And each one of them were very interested and enthusiastic. We've already had about 2 or 3 companies from those Oshkosh visits come down and visit physically in Oklahoma and look to relocate to our state. And so pretty amazing opportunity. Obviously, the keynote of the week is our Saturday luncheon with all the Oklahomans that we have. And of course, we invite our companies to come. And we have Senator Jim Inhofe, EAA's Jack Pelton, that comes and speaks and talks about kind of the raw, what we need to do in aviation to lift everybody up and move everybody forward. So pretty exciting times. We had a full tent there at EAA on our Saturday luncheon, and it really was a great opportunity. And I think we're going to look to expand upon that in the future and make Oshkosh maybe a little bit bigger deal than it has been in years past. So great opportunity. And I know both Nick and Thomas on my staff came with us, and it was very, very exciting for them to be able to see that for the first time and really become awe-inspired by what aviation and all the different facets of aviation can mean, not just to the state, but to the country as a whole. But that's my briefing, Commissioners. I'll stand for any questions.
Well, thank you.
Item number 7, NASAO Annual Convention. As you know, this is our national association. I was up in Colorado Springs with several of our staff in early September, where we talked about all the major issues. In fact, this is the first time we had gotten together as an association since our 2020 legislative conference. That was actually the week and a half before COVID really shut everything down and the infamous Thunder game happened that really started the chain reaction of everything kind of closing down. It's a great opportunity to get to see my brethren there in Colorado Springs. For those of you that have not visited the World War II Aviation Museum there on the Colorado Springs Airport, I would highly encourage the next time you're in Colorado. That is an amazing museum right there. You can see Thomas and Nick and I there visiting that. We visited that museum our last night where our keynote speaker was a gentleman by the name of Walt Barbow. I don't know if any of you are aviation history buffs, but Walt Barbow, he's one of the few remaining World War II ace veterans that are still alive. He spoke to us. He was 95, still flies, still owns an airplane, and it really was a heartwarming story to hear Walt talk. And if you're really paying attention to kind of what was going on and some of the discussions that were happening there, he mentioned that, well, I was stationed in the Marianas, I think it's Marianas Islands, in early August of 1945, and I just, was out there. I was doing my duty. Was flying P-38s, both from a reconnaissance as well as an escort perspective. And he said, I was there early August 1945, Marianas Islands, seeing some big bombs loaded on some bombers, and then just continued on talking like nothing was happening. Well, there was a couple people at our table that were history buffs that kind of looked at each other and, well, what was happening in early August? Big bombs in the Marianas Islands. Those were the bombs that were being loaded for Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and he experienced that and saw it firsthand, and that was pretty amazing to hear that story and hear him talk there. And I mean, he could have gone on for hours and hours. He spoke for at least an hour and 15 minutes, but he could have gone on and talked for 2 or 3 hours about his experiences serving our country in World War II, and it really was just amazing to be in his presence. But I would highly recommend you guys going and visiting the World War II Aviation Museum. Great opportunity. That said, before you today, we need to renew our annual dues for NASAO, just shy of $11,300. Staff recommends approval, and I will stand for any questions or comments.
How do they determine the dues? Is it by the size of the state, the number of airports, color of your cat's eyes?
It's the same. So the way our state apportionment is done, the federal state apportionment is landmass, population. that's how they do their dues. It's the same thing, land mass population, they take that same formula. And so we would pay less than, let's say, an Idaho, or less than a Texas, but more than an Idaho.
Okay.
So that's how they determine the formula. Land mass and population, same way that the state apportionment's done for FA.
All right.
Want a motion?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, move approval?
Second.
Call roll, please.
Commissioner Potter,
Aye.
Commissioner Conway,
Aye.
Commissioner Ritz,
Aye.
Commissioner Rainey,
Aye.
Chairman Putnam,
Aye.
Commissioner Hunter.
Aye.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Financial report, Mr. Wadsworth.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Starting out with the financial summary document, as of the end of September, we had a ending cash balance of just under $8.5 million, encumbrances totaling $7.7 million. Estimated statutory revenues for the remainder of this fiscal year are $3.8 million, and outstanding reimbursements owed to the agency total $1.5 million. The amount of projects, remaining expenditures in the airport construction program that could be incurred during this fiscal year total $2.9 million. So that would leave us with an expected available cash balance after encumbrances and expected income of around $3.2 million at the end of this fiscal year. And then finally, total expenditures this fiscal year to date, July, August, September, total $901,000. On the revenue document, total statutory revenue collected for the month of July was $434,517. August was down $164,080. And then the preliminary amount for September is $364,064. And that does not include the fees from the specialty license plate or the gasoline excise tax. We won't get those from Tax Commission, should be by Friday. But wanted to go ahead and show you what we've got so far this month, because even without those two, it was a good revenue month, as you can see from the chart there. Total statutory revenues collected through September this fiscal year total $962,000, which compares to $844,000 from the same time period last year. So we are up about 12% on our revenue for the first quarter compared to last year. And then finally, on the 3-year average chart there, you'll see that revenue collected from our statutory revenue sources are down about $200,000 compared to the 3-year average. That's going to be primarily from FY19. That year, we actually hit the cap on the excise tax, so that was a very high revenue year. So that's going to bump that 3-year total up a little bit and put us down below that for the year. But compared to the last 2 years, we're looking good so far this year through the end of the first quarter.
You seem to have more cash reserves, too.
Yes, and
That's
that is
'cause
due.
the
We do have the
COVID fallout.
appropriation. We have the $2 million appropriation sitting there. That's
Yeah.
included in those cash reserves that we have not had in the past. And as we start moving forward with that hangar program, we'll start paying those out probably next calendar year. So,
Nice position to be in.
yep.
Okay. Any questions? Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, I'm just going to hit one of these items because Paula was unable to be there for one of them. But as much as my travels have taken me across the state, there's probably one other person in our office that's been doing more traveling than I, and that's this lady right here. She's been doing some amazing work going out and visiting schools, visiting superintendents, all the way from small schools that may have a total high school enrollment of 70 or 80 people, all the way on up to big schools that may have, that are in the 6A category. And so the one thing that we are seeing is that there are a lot of people excited about what aviation and STEM curriculums can offer, and they are moving forward with the AOPA program, with the Choose Aerospace program, with some of the other different curriculums that are offered. And we really talked in earnest about those at the Southwest Central Region Aero Ed Summit that we held down in Lawton on July 23. As you can see there from this picture, we had probably about 30 or 40 different educational officials from the local area. Thank you to the senators and representatives that came. It was a great event. We did our same song and dance that we've done in a couple other areas across the state. We talked to various institutions. We talked about various programs, what this means to the aviation aerospace sector of the state. We know the number one challenge for aviation aerospace in Oklahoma is workforce and getting our kids excited about aviation aerospace careers, because that's what's going to move this industry forward to being the state's #1 industry in Oklahoma. That, at the end of the day, is really where the rubber meets the road, where we're seeing very excited eyes, very open minds to bringing in this curriculum into the classroom. And I was very excited to hear about that at the summit there in Lawton, and pretty excited. And I know Commissioner Ritz, you were there, so thank you. Appreciate you attending. I don't know if you want to have anything that you would like to say or add to that, but I thought it was pretty good.
I would just say that there is an awful lot of excitement, and what they're looking to us for and through grants is material. I think they're so worried that they're gonna have to come up with a significant amount of money. And when they realize that we're sharing across the state and there's a lot of opportunities, a lot of excitement.
Thank you. And I'll turn it over to Paula for the rest.
Thank you, Director. Good morning, Commissioners. The Director is right, I wasn't able to be in Lawton, but since that time, a week before last, the Lawton Public Schools contacted me. They want to know more about the AOPA curriculum. They also asked if they could schedule a time to come to Ada to visit with the district administration there about implementation and to visit the aviation laboratory, so we will make that happen for Lawton Public Schools, so that's a positive thing. In late August, I was also asked to MC a grand opening in Okmulgee of Okmulgee Public Schools Aerospace and Technology Innovation Center. Okmulgee took an old elementary school, and as you can see from that photo, refurbished it, it's beautiful, to house their STEM programs. Their robotics, they're in year 3 already of AOPA high school curriculum, and they're teaching the drone curriculum in Okmulgee. They are also partnering with Green Country Technology Center and OSU IT in the field testing of the Choose Aerospace Maintenance high school curriculum. There are 2 entities in Oklahoma field testing that, Middale Technology and Green Country Okmulgee it's a junior and senior high school course, and over the next couple of years, we'll be talking a lot more about that. It's in the field test stage right now. I was joined there by representatives from Covington Aircraft, Principal Chief David Hill from Muskogee Nation, many of their industry partners, so it was a great day in Okmulgee. And then Director Arties and I attended the grand opening of Pryor Public Schools' new STEM Center. Pryor is partnering with Rogers State College, and Rogers State has turned over a building to Pryor Public Schools that's actually on Mid-America Industrial Park, right there with all of the industry by the Google plant. And Pryor is hosting all of its STEM programs in this Rogers State building. Pryor, too, is in year 3 of implementing the AOPA curriculum, the pilot pathway, and next year they are going to partner with Tango Delta in the building of an airplane for their year 4 students that are in aviation. So that's exciting, a lot of exciting things happening in Pryor. And Director Arties gave the opening remarks at that meeting, and it was a very, very good day. We have also been working diligently, as he said, to make sure that Oklahoma school superintendents, school leaders, and for that matter, economic developers, city managers, know about this high school curriculum. And that's what's been so gratifying to me, is now I'm getting calls from city managers, from economic development offices saying, hey, can we meet? Will you come and will you meet with our school leaders? And so Sandra and I went to Duncan in early September and met with the Duncan team, their economic development, their airport folks, all of us together. As I left the Duncan restaurant that day, the superintendent said to me, we're going to do this. And so that's very positive to hear the growth already. Mainly, you just have to make them aware. And as Commissioner Ritz mentioned, that there are resources that can help them in these difficult financial times for schools. How can they make this happen? So we were in Duncan. I was then in Bristow with their economic developers and Bristow Public Schools. They're looking actually at the AOPA drone program and perhaps moving forward next year with that. I was then in Washington Public Schools outside of Norman. They're all in. They've already met with the Goldsby Airport folks, and that's what's exciting to me, is it's not just standalone in a school trying to do this, by itself. They're working with their community partners and with their airports and making it happen. I then went to Walters in Cotton County. The Walters city manager called me and said, hey, we have a building. We have an old building that we own that we'd like to refurbish, much like Okmulgee did with that elementary school. And how could we serve Cotton County students? How can we help our kids in STEM? I love the forward thinking of these community leaders and these school leaders. And then Director Arties and I went to Norman Public Schools last week, before last, I guess, and visited with the superintendent there and his team. I very much appreciate Director Arties, when he can, and his very busy schedule, joining me to visit with these school leaders, because it certainly lets them know the importance of aviation education when we go as a team and open the doors for them. And so we went to Norman, had a very positive meeting, and Director, yesterday, the Norman superintendent called me and said, we'd like to come to Ada also. We'd like to talk to the district administration, and could we tour the lab? I've said this many times, but I'm very appreciative to the Ada City Schools for continuing to have an open door policy to share what they have done, the work they have done with other school districts. And then on Monday, Director Arties and I were in Enid, where we met with the Enid Public Schools, the Chisholm Public Schools, Enid economic developers, and the airport representatives. And I think Enid, too, is very interested. So as you can see, we've been dotting the state and trying to spread the word. And in many cases, they're reaching out to me now. Hey, come tell us, we heard a little bit about this. Come tell us what's going on. So that's very positive. I've also been working in the grant program in the introductory stages at our last meeting when we awarded the 50 grants, working with many of the schools. We have hit a few barriers with COVID in that some of the materials and resources, for instance, simulators that they need to order and get in their schools, or the shipping, those kinds of things. There have been some issues, but we're working through those. I'm also happy to report that I believe, Sandra, 80 young ladies that are part of grant recipient programs will be attending the Women in Aviation Luncheon, something 75 or 80, something like that. We're closer to about 100. There we are, 100. I'm really excited. 100 young ladies from these schools that are our grant recipients to be able to come to the Women in Aviation Luncheon on November 5th. I believe that's all I have. Obviously, I appreciate your continued support so much, and I would welcome any questions you might have or any input that you have for me.
I would say we greatly appreciate what you've been able to do and continuing to do. And that spark you let down in Ada has really, really come up, and we're very pleased to see that.
Thank you very much.
Keep on. Thank you. Legislative update.
Mr. Chairman, I've had the opportunity to talk to two different legislative interim studies so far, hopefully maybe a third here after this meeting. The first one gave a little introductory discussion to Representative Newton's discussion about aerial application, ag aviation, and drift liability. Obviously, there's a lot of discussion going on right now about chemical drift onto other crops, specifically medical marijuana crops, hemp crops, so on and so forth. And so I just kind of gave a little brief introductory conversation. There was a gentleman there that spoke much more in earnestly than I did, president of the Oklahoma Agricultural Aviation Associations, Mr. Garrett Steggs. He is an ag operator and ag owner, has, I think, 3 or 4 airplanes in his fleet. And so he gave it from the perspective of what is the ag operator actually experiencing. Obviously, I am very knowledgeable at it at a very high level, and so that's why I provided just the introductory remarks. Also, it's the 100th anniversary of agricultural aviation in August. And so when we were at Oshkosh, interestingly enough, we visited with the National Ag Aviation Association and spoke to them about their celebration that they're experiencing this year. So great year for ag aviation and highlighting what that means to agriculture, not just in Oklahoma, but all across the country, and how they play an important role in getting food from farms to tables. Also spoke recently to Representative Tammy Townley's interim study on OSIDA, the Oklahoma Space Industry Development Authority. We have a lot of that history and a lot of that knowledge because, you know, OSIDA used to be a part of OAC back in the 90s. Obviously, they broke out in the early 2000s to be able to go off and get that spaceport license from FAA and become a licensed spaceport. But more importantly, they are a great aviation and aerospace asset. They have the opportunity to become an aerospace industrial park for Western Oklahoma like we see all across the country. They have a lot of land. They have a 13,500-foot runway, which is number 6 in the country, and all the ones above them, except for one, are big commercial airports. And so that provides them a lot of opportunity for growth, development. I know Craig Smith, if he was here today, would tell you all about the calls that they are getting from people wanting to develop on the airport and business opportunities that they are trying to do. And if you've seen in the paper, I think earlier this year and then again here in recent memory, Boeing 777 doing some brake testing out there. So that's pretty exciting news, the new 777X. So great things are happening with OSIDA, and this interim study was really just an opportunity to talk about what are the challenges, where do we need to go, what's the past been, and so it was a great opportunity to be able to speak to them. I believe it was for at least 20 or 30 minutes there when we had that interim study a couple of weeks ago. So stand before you for any questions on item A.
No? Moving on?
Before you, the next item, item B, oh, and there's a picture. I was in attendance virtually. I had another meeting, so I had to speak virtually, but you see Sandra's there well represented with Representative Townley and several other representatives. And then obviously just to the left of Sandra is Craig Smith, the director of OSIDA, if you haven't met him yet. Good guy, used to work for former Congressman Steve Russell, and so now heading up the OSIDA organization and doing some great things for them. B is our 2022 legislative agenda. Obviously, bill request deadline is coming up before our next December commission meeting, so we'll need to get approval from you to go forward with our 2022 legislative agenda. This looks very similar to last year's legislative agenda. Obviously, we're going to go after removing the cap on aircraft excise tax. Last year, we did not exceed that, but we got close. And so that's our number one priority, as it has been for many, many years since that cap's been put in place. I have it on good authority that we have a good shot at getting that removed this year, given the state's budget picture is looking to be fairly good and on the upward trend. So last year, I know we were not looking good at the beginning of the session, but by the end of the session, things were looking good, and so we just did not make it over that hump, although we did get the $2 million of appropriations. That was a good prize for us to get. And moving on to our second priority item is that, yes, we would like to continue getting an appropriation for OAC, at least the same amount that we received last year. If we can increase that, great. One of the stories I think we'll be able to tell just based on preliminary information on our hangar program, I sent out the request for information to the airports about 2.5 weeks ago, maybe 3 now, saying here's the framework of the hangar program that we are standing up. If you're interested, please respond with these answers to these questions. Understanding that probably with the $2 million we have, we may only get to 4, 5, 6 different projects. I've already gotten at least 15 requests, and I've talked to several airports more that we have at least another 10 or maybe 15 requests coming in addition to what we've already gotten. So I'm hopeful that we'll be able to share that story with the legislature to go after additional money and additional appropriated dollars. Number 3, commercial air service incentives. This was a thing that we also went after last year. As we know, there's incentives that are tossed to airlines from our commercial airports to not necessarily fully subsidize a new route, but it's just to get them over that hump. And so anytime an airline goes forth and wants to develop a new direct route, there's risk. There's inherent risk in that business development opportunity for that airline to start that new route. Yes, they have the numbers and the data from all of the information from city pairs and where people are starting their trip and ending their journey, but there's risk involved. And so a lot of airports, and there are some states out there that provide a air service enhancement or an air service incentive or a subsidy to kind of mitigate some of that last final mile risk, as we might call it. And so the state has been looking at this for several years. There's a study that's probably going to be going on this fall through winter into next session to figure out how can we handle and how should we implement commercial air service incentives. And obviously we as the Aeronautics Commission, want to play a big role in that, given our expertise in the airport industry, in the airline industry, and I would say that we are probably the best expert on airlines, air transportation, and airports in state government. So looking to see if we can move that forward this year and maybe take advantage of some of that surplus money and some of that extra money that's going to be available come next legislative session. Last but not least is legislation on UAS and advanced air mobility. There is nothing monumental that we're going to bring before the legislature this year. We've been in several discussions about changing and tweaking some of the language that was passed last year that designated the Aeronautics Commission as the UAS clearinghouse. One of those things would be adding AAM to that. As we know in the industry, from the general public's point of view, AAM and UAS are kind of used interchangeably. But in reality, they are different characters. They're a little different. UAS is more the drone, the unmanned aircraft, whereas advanced air mobility is more the Uber drone or the Lyft drone that we see of taking people from point A to point B autonomously in an aircraft. So maybe tweaking that a little bit. I've also been invited to the Advanced Mobility Council, which is a piece of legislation that was passed in 2020, and Secretary Gatz is just now standing up that council. We may want to make a couple of tweaks and expand upon some of that language, maybe add a few more seats to that council, as we're limited to 9 currently by statute. And so it's going to be minor tweaks to UAS, nothing monumental like we've taken before the legislature in 2016 or 2019. And so I'll stand before you for any questions, but these are the 4 items that I would like to move forward with as the agency to move forward to the 2022 legislative session.
When was that excise tax, when was it capped and what was the reason?
So there was some tough budget years back in 13, 14, 15, I think maybe even into 16. In 14, we had $3 million taken from our account. We had a high balance with unencumbered monies. And so the state, like it can and has on a routine basis, and I know we've heard the governor talk about that, how we're in a much better financial position today than we were in the past, where they would take monies from non-appropriated agencies and use that to balance the overall budget. That happened in 2014. Following on with that, because we were in still a bad budget year in 2015, that's when the cap came into place. And so the cap was put on our revenues just as a simple, okay, we're gonna put you at $4.5 million. Anything over and above that goes to the general revenue fund. And really the reason for it was the budgetary concerns. And of course, there's some politics involved there too, and we can talk about those politics offline. But the situation was, it was really there was budget crunches happening in 13, 14, 15, and 16, and so those were the 2 pinches that we felt as an agency. In 14, taking the $3 million from us, and then in 15, putting the cap on our aircraft excise tax.
Okay.
Any other questions or concerns? Well, I'd really like to see that cap removed.
You and me both,
That'd be
Mr.
great.
Chairman.
Yeah.
You and me both.
And appropriation again would be very nice.
And I'll take that too.
Yeah. Let us know what backup or meetings you'd like to have us go with you on these things.
Absolutely. I think
I'd like to support you on these.
Sandra is going to be talking to you about a big event that we'll have at the Capitol in the spring. Don't want to steal her thunder, so that'll be one you'll want to put on your calendar.
Okay.
And that we'll want to parade you around the Capitol about, so.
Okay. Entertain a motion for approval?
So moved?
Second.
Call roll, please.
Commissioner Potter,
Aye.
Commissioner Conway,
Aye.
Commissioner Ritz,
Aye.
Commissioner Rainey,
Aye.
Chairman Putnam,
Aye.
Commissioner Hunter.
Aye.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, you bet. Mr. Young?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. For item 11, we are seeking approval to move forward to act as agent for OSIDA and Clinton Sherman Airport for airport planning, construction planning, consultant selection, airport construction improvement program implementation, and project closeout, those types of items for the next 5 years. While OAC has jurisdiction to act as agent for state-owned airports, OSIDA is exempt, as whenever Director Arties was mentioning, whenever they broke off to become their own agency. So since they are exempt, we wanted to follow the correct process and get your approval for this. And this is simply so we can lend our airport planning and infrastructure expertise to them at the airport so that OSIDA can focus on the business development aspect at the business park out there and really try to make that all it can be. So staff recommends approval, and I stand for any questions.
It doesn't make any sense to me to have them duplicate the same function we do. So we are acting as their agent in this case.
Right, for the airport infrastructure side of the house, so that they can focus more on the business development. And typically, for a state airport, we wouldn't need the approval to do so. We could just do so because of the statute listed there under Title III, Section 85. But since they're they're exempt from that, we just need to follow the correct process, and they have asked us to act as their agent on their behalf in this aspect.
So we'd be doing the very same thing as we do with the others.
Right.
Any other questions? Entertain a motion?
Move to approve. Second.
Call roll, please.
Commissioner Potter?
Aye.
Commissioner Conway?
Aye.
Commissioner Ritz?
Aye.
Commissioner Rainey?
Aye.
Chairman Putnam?
Aye.
Commissioner Hunter?
Aye.
Commissioners.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, before you on this next item is something that we have talked about internally for many years. It's kind of come out of the framework, Commissioner Hunter, I know we've talked about it. How can we get more people to airports? How can we get more people to go visit airports and to really see the full efforts and assets that our airport system is? And I know at Oshkosh, at some of the other trade shows that we've gone to, there are a lot of people that are excited about coming to Oklahoma and visiting our airports from out of state just for a weekend. They'll come, it's a couple, they're retired, they have an airplane, they want to come visit a location and spend a weekend there. And so we have put together what we believe is a really good proposal. The premise of this was the passport program. That was originally what this was driven out of. But in some conversations with some of the developers that are under contract here at ODOT using one of those contracts, we kind of saw an opportunity to move us into the 21st century and do some good technologically savvy things and get us out of the paper game and the paper process. And so I've got Thomas here, who I knew was very enthusiastic and energetic and excited about this, being a pilot himself. And I want to let him talk a little bit more about it in detail of what we're going to be discussing with this airport passport mobile application that we're proposing. And it's going to be very similar in like kind to some of the other apps that you're seeing, some of the tourism apps. That's something that the Lieutenant Governor's been very, very in earnest about, very excited about, is tourism in general. And we've talked to him several times about aerotourism. How can we increase aerotourism to our state and benefit not only our airports, but our tourism industry as well. So Thomas, I'll let you take it from there and then stand for any questions.
All righty, thank you. Good morning. So the app that we're looking at developing will serve as Oklahoma's aviation passport, similar to the paper passport systems that some of the other states offer. We're looking to do that electronically, georeference the airports with check-ins. Similar to AOPA's pilot app, check-in is sort of one of the frameworks we're using for inspiration here. One of the benefits of going to a digital format is it allows us to run not only your standard aviation passport, i.e. visit as many airports as you can, but we can also do challenges or games additionally and do a grass runway weekend or something similar. We can do short duration, we can cherry pick airports if we want. So it opens up a lot of opportunity to do different things with the apps than the standard passport, which of course we would do additionally. As Director already said, we have had a lot of call for an aviation passport app, particularly at Oshkosh, and then interacting with various aviation groups in the state. This is something that has been of interest to pilots coming in. Also, through this app, we are planning to use it as Oklahoma's airport facility directory versus printing a paper version. So not only would it have the standard AFD data, runway length, comms, that sort of thing that we're all familiar with as pilots, But doing it digitally allows us to update that basically instantly on the fly without having to wait for a print cycle. And we can do additional information that is not standard in AFD, such as availability of ground transport, or things to do, points of interest, restaurants in the area. We've had lots of people ask about things to do near airports and where are the best touristy places to fly. So that will give us the availability to put some of that in, and again, update it on the fly and have that be current, valid data versus waiting for a print cycle. So that's a high-level overview of what we're looking to do here, and I will stand for any questions.
What's the time frame for development?
We hope to develop over the winter, and I really would like to have a spring of next year start date, and have it ready for the flying season next year.
Will you be eliminating all the paper products?
We would continue printing paper arrow charts, and we
Probably a limited subset of aeronautical directories. We know there are a few, especially one of our prize senators that loves the paper directories, and so we plan to still print a limited amount, but this is going to allow us to not have to print 2,000 and 3,000 like we would normally do, and so we're probably talking closer to maybe 200 or 300. But it's going to eliminate probably about 80 or 90% of the paper that we're going to have that we would use at Oshkosh or any of the other aviation trade shows. We take a lot of printed materials with us.
Does that eliminate, I mean, can they print from the app if they need to?
Like an airport directory?
That was not a capability we envisioned. It's something we can look into.
Find it easier to email from the app to an email address, and then they can pull it up in their email and print it.
Oh.
Who's your software developer?
So our software developer is HBE Systems. They are the ones that are under contract here at ODOT and OTA and have developed their app. And so given that we are part of the modernization initiative, obviously, is to partner with our Department of Transportation and make sure that the cabinet is kind of aligned. And so that's who we were going with.
What are they estimating the cost for development?
So you'll see on the agenda item, we're looking at about $70,000 total cost. It was, I think that the actual dollar number was about $68,000 and change. And then we're looking at probably a $5,000 to $7,000 annual maintenance cost to keep it up, depending on how many users of the system are using it.
Is this iOS only, or is this iOS and Android?
I believe it's both.
So this would be something more kind of tourism, get people to visit, because you've got apps like ForeFlight and Garmin Pilot where faculty, you can look up restaurants and crew and operating hours. So it's not necessarily to try to compete with that, but more from a tourism
Right,
perspective.
yeah, this is a tourism perspective. We're not trying to compete with ForeFlight or anybody like that. What we're trying to do is almost replicate, we've seen some of the apps for the Oklahoma trails.
Yeah.
That's what we're trying to make an aviation trail app.
What I see too is, there's Central Oklahoma Aviators Facebook page, and you've got somebody running Instagram, and there's all these pages. But if something could be consolidated through the app, where hey, here's the fly-ins that are going on in Oklahoma, and here's some of the different events that would be kind of go-to, because a lot of people might not know about these certain pages, and I feel like having something kind of central through the app might be beneficial too.
Yeah, that's, go ahead.
We do envision there being an event calendar function in this app that we could list all the fly-ins around the state.
Also, I've watched over the years, this commission is grasping for ways to generate revenue, from license plates to everything imaginable, airport, aircraft excise taxes, fuel taxes, everything else that you can think of. It seems like this commission is looking for to raise money. Here's your opportunity. And instead of,
Save money.
well, it's way more than just saving money.
Well, I'm saying in addition, it's like from a paper standpoint.
Right.
But then all the above.
For example, how much time and energy and effort went into our license plate program?
Went into the license plate program?
How many hundreds of hours of effort did we spend in discussions and meetings and everything else among staff, as well as the commission, on the license plate program, for a program that generates what, $2,800 this year?
I don't know that we spent a whole lot of time on the license plate. It was,
Did not. It was a legislative effort, sir.
Okay.
It was in an omnibus bill, and so it was just a matter of asking that lawmaker to insert it.
Okay.
The art was dedicated by Chris Nick, who's an artist here in Oklahoma, and so it was.
My point is, it's not a huge revenue generator. I mean, we give away more than that in a single educational grant. And we spend time and effort on those things. In this application, you've got the ability to, for example, all those businesses that want listings, like restaurants, you can charge them for those restaurant listings in this app. Doesn't have to be a lot. There are a whole lot of restaurants out there. If you charge $10 a year to have your restaurant listed, just like advertising in a printed catalog. This app can also extend well beyond the state of Oklahoma, if you write it correctly. That gets picked up and used nationwide. Where you favor Oklahoma over other states very subtly, kind of like Facebook favors some things subtly over other things. If you play it correctly, this app could generate way more revenue than you generate through your, than the aircraft excise tax. You just have to think it through as a business model, and you wouldn't need a state appropriation if you built the app correctly. I would recommend getting away from the word passport, because a passport by nature is restrictive. And I understand this is largely a game or a piece of reference material. But the first thing that comes to mind is, oh no, I'm gonna need a passport just to land at one of your airports. That's first reaction. Get away from that word.
Okay.
And discover Oklahoma. Or I know that's an ad campaign that they've already used, but something similar to that is non-restrictive. There are a lot of routes to go on this, and you can make it a revenue generator for the commission that helps fund our airports.
And we can definitely look into that. As a state agency, we are limited to what we can do legally, and so we have to check to make sure that we can do advertisements and that we have the ability to do that. And one of the things we're gonna base this off of is the existing tourism apps that we have. And so if tourism's already doing that, then we probably shouldn't have a problem with doing that. But if tourism is restricted on doing that, then we probably will
Well,
have a
if you're
problem
not
with
charging
that.
for it, you shouldn't be allowed to advertise at all, because that would favor one business over another at no cost to that one business. So you shouldn't be allowed to list any business unless you have the ability to list them all. And if you're going to do it, seeking revenue out of it to make this agency cash flush instead of a liability is the direction I'm sure every taxpayer would prefer you take.
And like I said, we can take a look at that and see if we can create a revenue stream. But really what we're after here is we're trying to get the public,
I understand.
the aviation public, to see here are the services that are offered near our airports. This is more of a location, a geographical benefit to the airport.
I understand that perfectly.
So-
But if you don't do this, you're missing a huge opportunity. First off, in recovery of your $70,000, which you should do by whatever means. And second, it will recover way more than your $70,000 if you do it properly.
Right.
Why you would pass that up, I can't imagine.
This is sure
That would be
tailing on
contempt for
the
taxpayers.
ODOT contract.
It is.
They,
Yes, sir.
you're using their contractor to
Yep.
help develop this?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes, sir, Mr.
So you're
Chairman.
constrained to some extent.
We are constrained to some extent, given the state requirements, and like I said, we're gonna invite, and we've already had discussions with tourism on this app and the development of the app. So what tourism does will really dictate what we can do with the app, and what ODOT does, what OTA does with their apps are really gonna be instrumental in how we can develop our particular app.
Okay. Any other comments or concerns?
I just think a failure to pursue the advertising opportunities is contempt for taxpayers.
That'd be hard, something to look at.
Yeah.
Look at it hard. Please do so. Any other comments?
Just a quick, have you contacted tourism and commerce to maybe go together and help with the funding?
We have reached out to tourism, yes, and asked them, one, can they just develop the app themselves? Obviously, they have a plethora of things that they have going on in their business process, and the answer was no. And so the funding aspect was investigated, and this is each individual app that's being made, whether it's a beer trail, a fishing trail, all had a different source of funding. And so that's where I think we, as the Aeronautics Commission, have to step up and say, do we want this or don't we want this? Because I think if we do want it, then we need to pay for it. If we don't want it, then in allowing somebody else to try and do it for us, it's gonna be years in the making to make that happen.
I would say my willingness to pay for it would be entirely dependent on whether or not you intend to make it repay that cost and return that cost and that expense.
Understand, Commissioner.
Interesting. Any other concerns or comments? Okay. Entertain a motion to approve the 70,000.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, call the roll, please.
Commissioner Potter,
Aye.
Commissioner Conway,
Aye.
Commissioner Ritz,
Aye.
Commissioner Rainey,
Aye.
Chairman Putnam,
Aye.
Commissioner Hunter.
Aye.
You bet.
Thank you.
Mr. Young.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For item 13, these are a couple of amendments to the 5-year airport construction program. The first one here is to seek an amendment to the ACP. We'd like to identify 8 locations to either install or replace their automated weather observation systems, AWOS systems, for a total estimated cost of $1.25 million. The initial one that is currently in the ACP is an AWOS program for $1 million. We also have an ADA project that's a standalone AWOS project, so that's where the totals aren't really different. They're just combining this so that we can see the overall scope of the AWOS package that we like to bring forth. We anticipate breaking all of those out once they're identified and confirmed, and bring those into each individual ACP page whenever we bring them before you for approval for each grant. And we look to do that more than likely at either the December or the January meetings. We're looking to potentially do 5 replacement systems and 3 new installs. For the replacements, ADA is the first project, as I mentioned before, already in the ACP, and then also with Salazar, Claremore, Grove, and Alva. And for new installs, we were looking at South Grand Lake, Fairview, and Kingfisher airports. For the replacements, I will note that every single one of those is at least 20 years old, and they are all the analog systems, so trying to get new parts and replacement, those types of items, getting more and more expensive and harder to find. And as we'll discuss in the next item, after the 5-year ACP, we're more than likely going to be looking for 2 separate consultants to help us out with these and break them into each consultant helping us out with 4 of these apiece. But for this modification and amendment to the ACP, staff recommends approval, and I stand for any of your questions.
We're going to consider, okay, you've already covered item B then.
Not quite for item B. That's for item 14 is what I was alluding to whenever we talk about the request for proposal, request for qualifications. But B will be for the Atoka Municipal Airport. It's separate.
So we're looking at 1.25 million and 300,000. Is that correct?
For this particular item, for the AWOS item, for this one, for the AWOS package, it's just a 1.25 million.
Okay.
And then for the next project that I'll bring up for you, on mine, it had action required for each one of them, if you'd like to hear them both at
I
the
see
same
that
time.
now. Okay, well, let's
I'm
go
more
with
than-
item A then. Concerns or questions on item A and 13?
I do. How did we arrive at the 1.25 million number?
It's just the general planning estimates that we got from conversations with different consultants around the state.
So we haven't opened for bids, we didn't get that number
Correct, 'cause,
bids.
yeah, that's what, when, in item 14, whenever we go out for a request for qualifications to have some consultants help us out with these, that's whenever those costs would be scrutinized and brought down to what we anticipate those actually
So we're
being.
approving 1.25 million, even though it isn't likely to cost that much.
It's just, all we're trying to do right now is just amend the ACP, this page itself, so that we're bringing the ADA, instead of having one ADA project, ACP page, this is just to bring the full AWAS package that we're planning for, putting them in one spot so that we can see the overall scope of that. And so all we're looking to do is amend the ACP right now, not to actually grant the funds.
I understand. The reason I'm asking is when I put in a new AWAS system at my airport, it was approximately $100,000. Obviously, I paid for it cash out of pocket. But that was an entirely new, no existing tower, no nothing. And it's an FAA-approved AWAS system. I realize a few years have passed since then, which prices continue to escalate. But at the same time, if you're putting in 8 locations, one would think you would have some bargaining power to negotiate those down to a lower price.
And that's absolutely our hope.
Also, if you're replacing existing systems, that means you don't necessarily have to replace the tower that it's on. You've got some cost savings there if you're replacing an existing system.
Right.
So I'm hoping this comes in at well below 1.25 million.
We are as well, Commissioner.
Director Artis, you had a comment?
Yes, Commissioner Hunter, just a clarifying remark there. What we're doing, this is the programming number. So, we have approval of the ACP document, that's the program funds, and then obviously we bring back to you the grant and the grant funds after bids have been received. And I'll remind everybody on the commission that we don't get to negotiate bid prices. We go out, we use the Public Competitive Bidding Act, and what the lowest bid is what we have to go with. And yes, Mr. Commissioner, $100,000 for your airport, was that 2017, 2018?
Something like that.
Prices have doubled since then, because we were getting AWASs in that $120,000, $130,000 range.
There's not that much technology in them.
I understand, I'm just telling you.
There isn't really anything there, so you should be able to say, look, here's an RFP for 8 locations, these 8 locations, and we expect you to be competitive. And if you're not competitive, or we even retain the option to re-let it for bid if you're not competitive or if you price yourself out of the market. And open it to every comer that you possibly can to make sure that you can get a competitive price. I mean, that's how I got it at 100,000. Actually, I paid, I think, 80 instead of 100. Some of the bids were as high as $175,000 for exactly the same system. So be selective. Get us our biggest bang for the buck.
I absolutely plan on it, Commissioner. Thank you.
Thank you.
So right now, we're looking at an amendment to the 5-year plan.
That is correct.
And the cost here are estimates to be determined later
These
and
are
approved later.
engineering estimates based on previous bids that we have received at various airports from across the state.
Got it. Okay. Entertain a motion for approval of the amendment.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay. Call the roll, please.
Commissioner Potter,
Aye.
Commissioner Conway,
Aye.
Commissioner Ritz,
Aye.
Commissioner Rainey,
Aye.
Chairman Putnam,
Aye.
Commissioner Hunter.
Aye.
Thank you, Commissioners. For item B here on item 13, this is to seek an amendment to the 5-year ACP for a project that's currently slated in fiscal year 2023 at Atoka. That's currently in there as a $450,000 project. We'd like to split that into 2 phases. The first phase would be the preliminary airport siting study. As Director Artis mentioned earlier, they are very land constrained, and we need to look at a different location. So for the preliminary siting study, we'd like to break that off into phase 1 and slide it forward to fiscal year 2022 at an estimated project cost, that planning level cost of $150,000. Phase 2 of the project will remain for the environmental and preliminary design aspect there in fiscal year 2023 at an estimated project cost of $300,000. As Director Artis alluded to earlier, we were able to meet with city and airport leaders there in Atoka to discuss the situation down there, and they were able to provide some great information regarding their current airport activity and future demand that they've been receiving calls about that would justify, we believe, a 4,500-foot runway. And obviously, the current location cannot provide that. They're very land constrained even at their 3,015 feet right now. Considering the potential unique funding opportunities, ARPA funds, those types of things, as we talked a little bit about today already, with those being on the horizon, we would like to slide this initial siting study forward so that we can potentially take advantage of those opportunities as they arise in the coming years. This, again, we're just amending the project here, breaking that out into 2 phases, and hopefully sliding that phase 1 up to fiscal year 2022. Staff recommends approval, and I stand for any questions.
Well, you've been to Atoka, and what are the city leaders willing to project as their funding in the future? Are they gonna put up 3.5 million, 5 million? 'Cause it's not gonna be cheap, I know that.
If I can, I'd like to defer to Grayson for this one. I've been kind of on the back end of these conversations, so he might be able to provide some additional information on that one.
Mr. Commissioner, there are several funding sources that are being discussed, both city, tribal, ARPA, BIF, so on and so forth. And yeah, we are looking at a significant chunk of change, but the city is willing to, they've already said they're willing to acquire the property themselves, which is not a small feat in and of itself, given the amount of acreage that they're gonna have to acquire and given the prices and the value of land in southeast Oklahoma as it stands today. So they are exploring that, and part of this siting study that we're gonna go into is okay, what is the different costs that are gonna be associated with the different phases of the project? We're looking at something that's gonna be probably in the 8-figure range, clearly. And whether that's, 10 million, 20 million, 30 million, I think it's gonna be somewhere in that mix, depending on what the build-out is. I will also tell you they have identified other potential industrial activities for this location too. And I know they're working with the county, with the tribe, to identify that. So they are very receptive, and they have shown a very aggressive nature to go after a new airport location. So I'm pretty confident that they're gonna be able to come up with whatever kind of match funding would be required, either through a OAC grant, FAA grant, EDA grant, or some other kind of grant that we haven't even envisioned yet.
What tribal entity is that?
That's the Choctaw Nation.
Choctaw,
Yeah.
okay.
What would happen to the existing airport? I'm assuming the site's gonna be, several miles away, but the existing airport, would they close that, or?
So the existing airport would go away, obviously, after the new airport would be built, if that's the determination that the study and everything can come to, and we have the funding that's available, so on and so forth. There likely would be some kind of land swap, and whatever money would be gained from that airport location would have to then be reinvested in the new airport location. That's part of the FAA and OAC grant assurances, is that when you close an airport location, you sell off property, whether surplus or otherwise, that money has to stay with the airport. In this case, it'd have to stay with the new airport location.
What have we spent on this airport improvements over the past 5 years? Didn't we have a runway lighting system?
So we have had a runway lighting system, that was FAA funded. We have had a PAPI system, and that was us. We funded the PAPI system. Fortunately, for those systems that were funded, they're pretty easy to pick up and relocate. So I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of concern there. The pavement, the runway pavement has been widened recently, and there's been crack seal coat put down, but if you're looking at the scope and time that it would take to put a new airport in the ground, at the quickest, it's 5 years. So, there's not gonna be a whole lot of activity, no more investments at the existing airport, and everything's gonna try and go towards the new location.
My next question is that the 142,500 ask here, is that paying for someone just to do a siting study and find a new location? Because that seems like a lot of money for somebody to find a location.
So there have been several locations already identified. The siting study takes it through the formal FAA process of checking all the boxes that the FAA requires for building a new airport location. So yes, you have the siting study identifying the sites. Why'd you pick that site? What's the estimated cost going to be? Topographic survey, geotechnical services, those kinds of things to be
Those
able
will
to,
be performed.
yeah.
Okay.
So there's more than just someone looking at a map and going, I want to go here.
All right.
There's a lot more engineering, hundreds of hours, if not 1,000 hours, that goes into
That
this
makes
kind of
sense.
effort. Yeah.
Just making sure it wasn't simply the
Yeah.
pick a location.
Right, and between you and me, they've kind of identified, we all know southeast Oklahoma is pretty hilly, and to make it simple for everybody's life, you try and find the clearest, flattest spot of land to put an airport. So they've already identified probably the primary choice, but we still have to go through the machinations in the process to be able to check all the boxes necessary.
It'd be good to put the new airport where there isn't a hill off the end of the runway.
There you go, yes, or a cemetery, or a highway, or a ravine, so, yeah.
Okay. Any other questions or concerns? Entertain a motion for approval.
So moved.
Second?
Call a roll, please.
Commissioner Potter,
Aye.
Commissioner Conway,
Aye.
Commissioner Ritz,
Aye.
Commissioner Rainey,
Aye.
Chairman Putnam,
Aye.
Commissioner Hunter.
Aye.
Item 14.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For this one, this is the one I alluded to a little bit earlier. This is requesting approval to proceed with the request for qualifications on that AWAS program. And this is what would help us break it down into the actual cost estimates based on the current state of the market, who's offering the systems currently, those types of things. And so we are simply looking for your approval to proceed with the request for qualifications process. And I'll stand for any other questions we have on this.
I think Mr. Hunter's observations on this were worthy of serious consideration.
Certainly.
Okay. Any other concerns or questions? Motion for approval. I would like to move for approval on this one.
Second.
Okay. Call a roll, please.
Commissioner Potter,
Aye.
Commissioner Conway,
Aye.
Commissioner Ritz,
Aye.
Commissioner Rainey,
Aye.
Chairman Putnam,
Aye.
Commissioner Hunter.
Aye.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Item 15.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Obviously, we have Women in Aviation Day coming up. We partner with the Oklahoma Airport Operators Association to conduct that event. And I have to applaud and give all thanks, more thanks than I can give, to the lady sitting to my right, Miss Sandra Shelton, for everything that she's done. She has fundraised for this event significantly over the last 2 to 3 months, maybe even longer than that. 6 weeks, okay. But as we have done in the past, we would like to sponsor this event up to $1,000. That just allows us for some flexibility when those final numbers come in. If we need just a little bit more at the end of the day. If we don't need more, then obviously this $1,000 doesn't ever get spent. But staff recommends approval for a $1,000 sponsorship for Women in Aviation Day.
Motion
And
to approve.
I look
Second.
forward to seeing everybody there.
Motion
can
to
be.
approve.
Second?
No brainer.
Call a roll, please.
Commissioner Potter,
Aye.
Commissioner Conway,
Aye.
Commissioner Ritz,
Aye.
Commissioner Rainey,
Aye.
Chairman Putnam,
Aye.
Commissioner Hunter.
Aye.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners.
Commissioners, I love that enthusiasm for Oklahoma Women in Aviation and Aerospace Day. We are celebrating our 5th annual event. Oklahoma was first in the nation to recognize the contributions of women to aviation and aerospace in state statute, and we are so proud of that. And this year, we are partnering with the Oklahoma Airport Operators Association and also with AAR. And we have over 60 companies that will be with us there. We have over 100 students, 75 members from Tinker Air Force Base will be with us. I think there's probably 6 or 7 units, wings, that are going to be there with us. And I really want our commissioners there. I know Commissioner Ritz is committed to coming, and Commissioner Hunter is assisting us with bringing Wally Funk to our event. And so we are so pleased and honored to welcome her as well. If you would like to come, we are sold out to 600 people, and I have just a few more tickets in my pocket. So if you do want to come, we do want you to be there with us, and we want to make that accommodation to you. And please let me know as soon as possible if you do plan to attend. We have some dignitaries to seat as well. Challenge Air for Kids will be at Tulsa R.L. Jones Airport on October 9th. I think they're looking for a few more pilots. So we are looking forward to having some folks there, hopefully. And also, there's a fly-in car show at Pauls Valley on November 6th. And I think we're kind of winding down our event season, but we have had a great year. We went to the El Reno Airport, I guess was that last weekend? And the weekend before last was Guthrie Airport had a fly-in, and so they had a great turnout. So we've had a great flying season, and we are gearing up for spring, where we look to Aero Oklahoma Day, which will be March 30th at the Oklahoma State Capitol. I just reserved the rotunda, and they are only permitting us to use the second floor, so we are going to have to be creative in getting all of those people to the state capitol. And so I will be calling on your expertise and assistance to help us greet our lawmakers on that day. So please save the date. It's March 30th.
I have a question here. I'm confused. It says, the event is November 5th at AAR Hangar, and the coaster says November 9th. Is this an old
So-
one?
The day in state statute is December 9th. That is the birth date of Pearl Carter Scott. We have our event November 5th because that is the day that the 99s are in town for their annual board meeting. And so we want to welcome our sisters in aviation to Oklahoma. They come from, if you recall, in 2019, we had over 60 99s from across the United States attend our event.
Okay. See you for tickets, apparently.
Yes.
All right.
I hope Mrs. Putnam will come too. On a lighter and more exciting note, I take my first flight lesson on Friday. If you are in the western area of Oklahoma City, be advised.
Run for cover.
I saw
Got it.
that TFR the other day for the,
There's been a NOTAM issued. I yield for any questions, Commissioners. Thank you.
Any other questions or concerns?
Good job.
Yeah, great on fundraising.
I
It's
appreciate
amazing.
so much your support. Thank you.
All right. Oh, Ms. Sheldon, was there anything you wanted to say about tomorrow?
No.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So tomorrow, the Aero Caucus, it's just not a public event, but the Aero Caucus is meeting at an airport. And if you would like to attend that airport, I think Commissioner Putnam will be there. You're welcome to come with us, and you can see me afterwards.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Footnote, from the Guthrie Airport activity, I think we flew 132 kids that day. And I think a combination of the two Young Eagle events from last weekend was well over 60. So putting a lot of youth in the air. Okay. Thank you, Ms. Sheldon. 17, schedule Aeronautics Commission meetings.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioners, before you are the proposed dates for 2022 for the regularly scheduled meetings. I believe you received these from Andrea a couple weeks ago for your review and input as well. Assuming everything still looks good and there's no major conflicts, we just need to vote to accept these for next year.
Okay, I took a look at it. It seemed okay. How about the rest of you? Were you all good? Okay. I move we approve those dates. Do we have a second?
second.
All right, call a roll, please.
Commissioner Potter,
Aye.
Commissioner Conway,
Aye.
Commissioner Ritz,
Aye.
Commissioner Rainey,
Aye.
Chairman Putnam,
Aye.
Commissioner Hunter.
Aye.
Okay, concluding remarks, Mr. Ardis.
I do not have any concluding remarks other than please come to our events. Please show yourself if you are able. We'd be glad to have you there to see our fall lineup of wonderful events that we have, and I look forward to seeing you tomorrow, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Now, moving on to the next item, announcement of the next meeting. I have on my calendar Tuesday, December 14th, at 10 o'clock in this location.
That is accurate.
Okay, confirm that. Any new business which could not have been reasonably foreseen within the last 24 hours? All right, if there are hearing none, I call for adjournment. We are hereby adjourned.